Everyone. I am Manish Kumar, Superintendent Engineer Production, and presently posted in CBM Asset Bokaro in the Workover Services Department. And today I will be giving a brief presentation on the overview of CBM and its well operation. And I'll be also discussing how it is different from the conventional wells operation. So my presentation outline will be covering CBM introduction, its life cycle, and the well schematic diagram of a CBM well, and various operations which are prerequisite to the CBM well, that is perforation and hydrofracturing before start of the CBM production. And then further, how the CBM is being produced by the use of artificial lift system in the CBM wells. So with this, I'll be moving forward. So basically, CBM stands for coal bed methane, and coal bed methane gas is generated during the coalification process, either through biogenic or through thermogenic process. And coal has a orthogonal structure which also includes clits, and these clits are of two types, that is face clits and butt clits. These face clits are generally linear to the surface of the coal, and butt clits are basically perpendicular to the face clits. And these are natural fractures basically, which are already present in the coal seams. One more advantage of this coal reservoir is that it can hold 5 times more gas than the sandstone, and it has a commercial cycle of production cycle of around 25 years. So basically, coal gas, CBM gas is absorbed on the surface of coal, and which is at a very high pressure. That is, CBM wells are basically a subhydrostatic in nature, and for that we have to reduce this pressure by dewatering for a longer period of time, which may lead to the desorption of CBM gas from the surface of the coals, and so leading to the production of CBM. So for this, we require a very large quantity of wells in the reservoir block area, so that we can dewater a huge amount of water from the reservoir. And with this, we can reach a sustainable production of around 3,000 to 7,000 cubic cube per day in a well. So moving forward with this, I have already said that we have to see the life cycle of a block before seeing that it is commercially viable or not. So in a block, in CBM block, we generally go for, in almost all the blocks, we generally go for drilling of exploratory wells, and from those wells we acquire data, and according to those testing data of exploratory wells, we go on for drilling of a few more peripheral wells in the appraisal period, which takes almost 2 to 3 years. And after the data acquiring of testing data of these wells, we decide after seeing the commercial and techno-commercial feasibility of these blocks, and if it is viable, then we go for the development of complete block with drilling of more number of wells in those areas, so that we can go for heavy amount of dewatering of that area or desorption of gas from the coal seams. We can also see the production profile of CBM wells, where, as we can see here, wait a minute. As we can see that it has been divided, the whole production profile of a CBM well has been divided into 3 stages. That is dewatering stage, stable production stage, and decline stage. So initially when we start dewatering, it's not that gas immediately breaks. It takes time. After a certain point of time, when we keep on dewatering, a certain desorption pressure is achieved, and then the gas breaks and gas increase starts with sustained dewatering. As we can see with the blue line, that the dewatering rate reduces with time, but the gas increases with time, because the hydrostatic pressure on the reservoir keeps on decreasing with sustained dewatering. So after entering into the stable production stage for a certain period of time, then the declining stage starts in a CBM reservoir. So with this, I'll be moving forward. I'll be discussing this again in the later stages. So before moving forward, I will say that CBM block development is almost similar to the conventional block development, only at after a period of time when the wells have been drilled. After that, the path is a bit different from what we do in a conventional well. In a conventional well, drilling of a well is done through drilling rig, and then it is being completed and then handed over to the testing team for testing, and then further handing over to the surface team. But here, as perforation is being done in conventional also, but HF is a prerequisite for these CBM wells, as being a tight reservoir and very low permeable in nature. Hydrofracturing is required to increase the permeability of the coal reserves to the well bore. So for this, after drilling of the well, drilling rig is released and it is handed, the well is handed over to the well services. And after that, well services with workover rig or through conventional methods or charter hiring of CT unit, HF unit, perforation and HF is being done. And further, the completion is being done through workover rig, which is not common in the conventional wells. And after completion of the rig, completion of the CBM wells with artificial lift, that is PCP, SRP, or ESP, the dewatering of those wells starts. And further, after continuous dewatering, gas break is observed, and then the well is handed over to the surface team for commercial production. So here is a schematic diagram of a CBM well, which is basically following a two casing policy. And the difference from the conventional wells is that you can see many number of seams here. Generally, we encounter 3 to 5 seams in a CBM well, whereas in conventional, we encounter 1 or mostly 2. So here in CBM well, a commingled dewatering of all the seams. That is, we can say that production from all the seams is being taken place at a time. It's not that one seam is being produced and after that other seam is being produced. It's not like that. In initial stages of testing period, you can say in exploratory wells, we do these activities for understanding of individual seam behavior and its status. But later in the development stage, we go for commingled dewatering of all the seams and leading to production of CBM from the core reserves. And basically, the wells are of very shallow depth, not more than 1500 meter, ranging from 500 to 1500. And initially, the few wells are vertical, and accordingly, with the in the So moving on to the operational part of CBM wells, to start with, when the well is handed over to the well services after drilling. We also follow conventional perforation, and we also have perforation through hydrojet through chartered hire CTU units. In conventional perforation, it is being done as usual through use of explosive, and it is being lowered through wireline, and deployment of workover rig is required. Whereas hydrojet perforation, here use of explosive is not there. It is being perforated through a slurry of 1 ppg with 100 mesh sand, and that is being pumped through the BHA, which has a nozzle of 3 nozzles at a phasing of 120 degrees. And basically, this is a very cleaner method of perforation, as in explosive, when exploding or bombardment takes place, the fines generation at the wellbore happens. But here, it is not in the case of hydrojet perforation, and it limits the fines generation. It basically has a small cuts which has a larger diameter compared to the conventional perforation, and thus it does not require a deployment of workover rig also. So further moving forward, as I have already said, that hydraulic fracturing as a prerequisite to the CBM wells, being a very tight reservoir, the coal reservoir needs to be increased, permeability needs to be increased in the reservoir. So with hydrofracturing, we actually try to expose the surfaces, and we actually try to connect the pores, natural fractures, and by providing a path to the wellbore, so that the permeability of the entire coal reserves could increase, and the drainage area could also increase, so that we can dewater as much amount of water from the coal reserves. So it helps in increasing basically the drainage area and helps in increasing the permeability of a coal, which is actually very less at the initial phase. So in hydrofracturing, we have two setups. First, I'll be talking about the conventional setup. that is WSS fleet, which requires the deployment of workover rig, and the HF is being done with the assistance of workover rig. Basically, the conventional hydrofracturing takes more days for completion of HF in a single seam. It requires 2 to 3 days of flow back. Then after that, again, the above seams are being hydrofractured after isolation of the hydrofractured seam. So basically, it takes almost 5 days to complete hydrofracturing of a single seam, and if 5 seams are considered in a well, then almost 30 days is required to complete hydrofracturing and perforation of a well, and later sand clean out and completion of artificial lift requires another 8 to 10 days as per standard norms. But the advantage of CTHF units, which includes hydrojet perforation and hydrofracturing, that is, no rig is required to be deployed. The workover rig can do its other work. And here in CTHF unit, uh, basically it requires maximum 10 days to complete almost 5 seams in a well. And the advantage of hydrojet perforation and HF through CTHF unit is that it can work under pressure, whereas in conventional it cannot work under pressure, and we have to flow back individual seams. In this case, it can work under pressure, and after completion of HF of one seam, basically during underflush, the isolation of the seam could be done, and again the hydrofracturing of above seams could be taken up immediately, and thus saving a lot of time. And finally, after completion of all the HF of all the seams, commingled flow back could be taken through the setup of a choke manifold, you can say, at the well site, and this reduces a lot of time for deployment of workover rig, so that workover rig can come in the later part and can complete the well within 7 to 8 days. So the advantage of having C2HF unit is that it takes a lot less time and works under pressure. So this is how actually hydrojet perforation and HF works. I'll be showing a small video. Wait a minute. Wait a minute, I'm showing the video. It has hanged up for a while. This is the video which I was supposed to show in hydrojet perforation HF. First, the BHA is being lowered, and through nozzles, as I have said, through slurry pumping, the cuts are being created in the production casing, and after the cuts are being created, as you can see here, then the CT is being pulled out, and further the hydrofracturing of the seam takes place by pumping the propellant with the slurry. And in the later last stages, we do underflush for settling down of the sand, for isolation of the below seam, and then again the steps are being repeated for hydrofracturing of above seams one by one. And as you can see, again the CT has been lifted, and the HF is being completed in the second seam. And the repeated steps are being carried out to complete the hydrofracturing in all the seams of the CBM wells. Basically, after completion of hydrofracturing of all the seams, this complete sand in the wellbore, it needs to be cleared, and it is cleared through CTBHA, sand clean out process. And then after completing this whole sand in the wellbore, commingled flow back is being taken from all the seams, as you can see here. This helps in reducing time as compared to the conventional method of hydrofracturing. So as we have already discussed the various operations which is being required before to start the production of coal bed methane from coal. So now moving on to the production of CBM gas. In order to produce CBM, it is very essential that the coal seams, the reservoir has to be depressurized so that desorption of coal bed methane could take place from the surfaces of the coal, which is governed by Langmuir adsorption isotherm. And in this isotherm curve, as you can see that uh, when pressure is increasing on the coal, it has the storage capacity of the gas of the coal increases. So in the reverse method, as you can see that if the pressure will decrease, the storage capacity of the gas, CBM gas on the coal surfaces decreases. This means that desorption will take place from the surface of coal after a certain period of time, after a certain period of dewatering of the reservoir. So if considering that we are at point A at the initial phase, and when we start dewatering a CBM well, then we will find that the pressure will start decreasing. The hydrostatic pressure in the well will start decreasing with liquid level going down. And after a certain amount of dewatering, we will observe a gas break at a certain pressure, which is called critical desorption pressure. Individual seams have individual critical desorption pressure. And when we will achieve this critical desorption pressure, we will have a gas break in our CBM well. So it's not like we will perforate, we will HF, then gas will start automatically coming into the well bore. First, we have to dewater for a longer period of time. It depends upon the gas saturation, how fast it breaks. But until unless we reach this point, that is B, critical desorption pressure, we are not able to break gas, or we are not able to produce gas from a CBM well, you can say. So as we continue the dewatering of the well for a longer period of time, then we will see that the gas break, more and more gas will break, dissolve from coal surfaces, and production of CBM will increase. And with later part, here we can see that in declining stages, the CBM production will decrease with reduced water rates also, because the coal reserves water will keep on getting dewatered and it will decrease the hydrostatic pressure. In stable production phase, we can see that the production gas will be at an optimum level, where it will continue for around maybe 5 to 10 years, depending upon the gas content of that reservoir, and then further it will decline with the time. So as I have said that CBM wells are subhydrostatic in nature, so it will not produce as soon as we complete the well. So we have to install artificial lift system in the CBM wells, and some of the artificial lift which we are using that are PCP, which involves stator, rotor, and screw type design, which lifts the liquid, that is water, from the well, and second, that is submersible pump, which is being lowered in very high influx wells, because it has capacity to dewater at a higher rate, that is more than 100 meter cube per day, whereas in PCP it can dewater from 60 to 100 meter cube per day. So it is also lowered in those wells which has high influx rates ranging from 30 to 100 meter cube. Whereas in those wells where the influx rate is very less, that is ranging from 10 to 30 meter cube, or maybe maximum up to 40 meter cube, we also go for sucker rod pumps to have a continued dewatering, to have an optimum level dewatering, so that it should not dewater at a higher pace and lead to the dry run of the artificial lift pumps. So with this, I'll be moving towards the how a typical CBM well actually produces. This is a diagram which I'll be showing one by in phases, and you will be seeing that how actually the gas is being produced, how actually the water is being dewatered from the well. First of all, this diagram is completed with this well is completed with PCP, that is artificial lift system has been installed here, which has a prime mover and wellhead drive, which rotates this sucker rod, which is inside the production tubing, and and the flow arm valve, which is connected to the dewatering line, which is connected to the GCS also. And here is the annulus valves, which is connected to the gas separator of the well site and further connecting it to the GCS. Now with this, these are the seams, and this is the PC pump, subsurface pump, which has been lowered to the production tubing, which is of 27 by 8 inch. And further, after completing the well with the suitable artificial lift, that is PCP, here it is shown in this case, we open the annulus valves, And then when we start our drive head, you will see that the sucker rod starts rotating. And the sucker rod, which is connected to the rotor at the subsurface pump, which is inside a stator. So this rotor stator mechanism lifts the water, starts lifting the water from the well bore through the tubing. Basically, we are producing water in this CBM well. So gas will automatically dissolve after a certain period of time, as I have already said, according to Langmuir adsorption isotherm. So this water starts being produced through the tubing with continuous running of this PCP pump. And as you can see here, the rotor is there and stator is there, which has a helical space. This helical space acts like a screw, and when it rotates, it lifts the liquid from the bottom, and then it brings the liquid at the top of this rotor and further bringing it to the surface. And with sustained dewatering, continued dewatering of the seams, we will find that the liquid level starts going down, and when it reaches the critical desorption pressure, the hydrostatic pressure is almost equal to the critical desorption pressure, the gas starts liberating from the seams. And these gas is being produced through the annulus, not through the tubing, because gas has a tendency to move up. So the liquid is being produced through the tubing, just like conventional method, but here the liquid is water. But the gas which is being dissolved from the coal is produced through the annulus, and finally the production of CBM gas is being done through the annulus. So this is the difference from the conventional wells where we have our production from the tubing, and in CBM wells we have our production from the annulus. So this figure itself shows actually how actually a CBM well is operating and how the gas is being dissolved from the seams, and finally the production takes place in a CBM well. So with this, I would also like to give emphasis on one of our new initiatives, that is indigenous submersible pump, which is available locally in India, and it is being used. Although submersible pumps are being used in CBM wells for dewatering, but these indigenous submersible pumps are very cheap, and we have lowered in one of our wells for its testing at a shallow depth of around 500 meter. And the advantage of this submersible pump is that we can see there are level sensors. So when during dewatering phase, when the level of liquid moves down to a certain level, which is not good for the health of submersible pump, so it will automatically detect the lowering of liquid level at the first sensor, and then it will stop the submersible pump and avoid the damaging of submersible pump because of dry run. So this submersible pump is being under testing for almost 3 months in one of our wells, and it is dewatering at a rate of 100 meter cube per day. So it is going well, and we have also planned for a few more 5 indigenous submersible pump, and we'll be lowering in some of our shallow depth wells which have less influx rates, around 60 or 70, so that we can also test its performance in the gas break environment also, because presently the well in which it is being running, it has a very high influx rate and the liquid level is going down very slowly. So gas break has not been observed yet. But in other wells where the influx rate would be around 60 to 70, which we have identified already, we'll be seeing how it works when the gas break is observed, and it is good for the longer period of time, for a longer continued dewatering of CBM well or not. So with this, before coming to the end of the session, I would like to inform that surface facilities are also being developed at CBM asset. Almost 141 development wells have been planned, out of which 97 wells have been drilled, and 55 wells have been completed, and it has been connected to GCS. One GCS has been commissioned, and 2 EPS of a smaller quantity has been also commissioned at patch B of Bokaro block. And further, GAIL has to provide the Urja Ganga pipeline connectivity, and if this, which is expected by August 2023, and after the connection of this GAIL pipeline, we'll be seeing that CBM asset coming under the production stages, and will be on the energy map of India very soon. And we are very hopeful and positive about this, that we'll be soon producing CBM. Commercial CBM will be produced in the near future by around 5 to 6 months. So with this, I would end my presentation. Thank you very all for patience listening to this. And I would request everybody feel free to ask if anything. I'll try to clarify all the queries. And if not, then I will take help of my subordinates if required. So thank you, sir.